Hi,
Hello.
how's it going?
Great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
So, the reason we've asked you to join us today is because you're the executive producer of Balya Productions, and we want to know more about your work. So, can you tell us a little bit about Balya Productions? What is involved? How did it all start?
Yeah, so Balya Productions came about because I pretty much would be the only female, let alone First Nations person working at a lot of major events. On stage, it's a very male-dominated industry, but the women have been coming through. And I thought that it was a bit ridiculous that I didn't have another person that I could feed off of, especially being First Nations. So I thought that I could chuck in a mentoring program to be able to help my own people to learn what I do, come on board, train and mentor them. So Balya is actually from my own language in Kokatha, and it means good and good production. And the logo itself is about the community yarning circle and community events. So yeah, that's how it all came about. And I love the industry that I work in, and I really want to share that passion with other people that want to do exactly what I do, whether it's not what I do exactly, but also guiding them in a pathway to a career in their choice.
Yeah, that's great. And I'd love to know if you wouldn't mind sharing with us how your own journey in the industry and how you found your passion for the work that you do.
Yeah, so I studied music in high school, and then I went over to Adelaide University to CASM, which is the Centre for Aboriginal Studies in Music. And then I did 3 years of that and a year of sound engineering after that. And when I was studying, I just found a passion for music. And then I've had a bit of a mentoring opportunity to go over to WOMAD, and I worked on stage doing backline and production. So I loved it. Like it wasn't hard work for me. I just really had a passion for the music scene and being on stage and like seeing what happens behind the scenes. So from that, I just had a passion to be able to get into it, and I was happy all the time. So I went over to a couple of other gigs at the Adelaide Festival Centre. I went and did a couple of other gigs at Interstate International as well on tour. So Darwin Festival, Brisbane Festival, Sydney Festival, Adelaide Fringe. I worked for 6 years, and then I went over to Adelaide Festival as well. So I've over the years, in the 10 years, I've had a bit of a roundabout knowledge of how everything kind of works. And to travel is, when you travel on a job that you love, it's you never work a day in your life.
Yeah, and how long has Balya Productions been around for now?
We're just coming up on a year. So the first gig, it was in my hometown of Ceduna, brought electric fields here. And Zachariah, his family is actually from this region as well. So he's Yankunytjatjara and Pitjantjatjara. So the gig was on the 13th of July last year at NAIDOC Week celebrations as the International Year of Indigenous Languages. So we paired up with the Far West Language Centre and did a bit of a chat about what they're doing here as well with language and reviving.
That's so great. We are big fans of electric fields here at Mod as well. We've had them play in our museum once upon a time.
So good. I was at that gig. It was amazing.
And in the time that you've been running Balya Productions, what has been the most interesting or perhaps surprising part about running your own company?
Interesting, I guess, was getting yourself established. I mean, me being within the arts industry itself, I was already the face to see as a First Nations woman in that position. So the fact that I am in my own community and trying to get something happening within the Aboriginal community is that yeah, it's seeing what kind of knowledge and experience that you've had and opening that up to everybody else to be able to come on board in the mentoring program.
Yeah, wonderful. And as well as what's interesting, what are you finding the most enjoyable about it all?
Enjoyable. It's doing it for my people, and I love being on site. Like it's everything from being sound, jumping on lighting, from driving trucks, heavy machinery. So like being in office and making sure it's smooth operations from all your planning to your logistics to being on the ground and seeing it roll out, and especially having a fierce team that support me with my business as well as on the ground in events. And I loved having a lot of. I had about four of the mentors come on board with me on site this year at Gluttony Festival, And it was really good vibes, just bouncing off each other and teaching each other, keeping each other happy on site too.
Now, I don't mean to take things into a heavy direction, but one thing that we do want to know about is how the COVID shutdown affected your work. As many of us know, the arts industry was one of, if not the first industries to be hit really hard by the response to COVID. So what did the shutdown mean for you and the work that you were doing at that time?
Yeah, so I had a couple of gigs lined up straight after the Mad March season in Adelaide. So I lost 5 gigs in total myself as just an arts worker, not even with Balya Productions. So I saw it as an opportunity to escape and go back home, hang out with my family, reconnect with my country, with my community. It's been really difficult within the community because of all the shutdowns and restrictions. But it's kind of just taught me to slow down, get out of Adelaide City mode, reassess myself with my own position, the industry and what's happening, but also just allowing that to kind of sit and be present in the moment while I'm home. It would probably be the only time that I could come home until October, Christmas, those kind of breaks. So it's nice to be able to escape and come back here to be with my family.
And when starting everything back up again, so the government has announced, the arts package basically to help us keep our jobs and help production companies like yours bring them back to life by the end of the year. Is there a relaunching plan for you? Or is it all just a bit too unstable at the moment?
At the moment, I've always kind of my mindset is to forge ahead, keep planning. Like I've got things cooking, which is like nothing's really deterred me from not doing anything. I've always had a go-getter and determined attitude. It just kind of shut down the conversations for a bit, but the conversations are there, the support's there. I guess we've only got 6 months of the year left. So everything's kind of been pushed back, but it hasn't limited me in the sense of still doing what I'm passionate about. And definitely being back in community has been great to be able to have those community connections again and be present to chat with people in the community. So I'm back home now having these conversations, and I'll be coming back soon enough to be able to have the chats in the industry.
Yeah, it's so important to keep it going in the meantime as well, because it can get a little bit, that hopelessness kind of overtakes you in the arts where it's, you feel unvalued or undervalued. So are these talks with community and things like that, are they kind of, I don't want to say driving up business, but yeah, is that getting people more interested? Like you've got time for people to kind of know about the work that Balya does?
Yeah, it's like definitely like during COVID, I pretty much put my branding out there as the language as well. So I've done a bit of merch to be able to start the conversation on who is Balya, where did this label come from, who are they? And then the fact that I'm always representing here in my community is that now the dots are kind of connecting, and that I'm here to be able to have those chats, and I'm doing like the face-to-face when I can, or via email, just to start touching base and be like, hey, we're still here. Like, I still want to have these conversations. So it hasn't really, the whole process of being here and making sure Balya is still known is so dear to my heart, especially within my own community.
And so what would you say to other people who might be thinking about getting involved in the opportunities that your work provides?
Yeah, I definitely say don't be afraid to have a conversation with us. If you're not sure on what exactly Balya is, we're working on our website to be able to give a bit more information. I'm very approachable. I'm happy to chat, and I'm always in community to be able to have those conversations in the arts industry, as well as at NAIDOC celebrations, all those kind of things. Like, I'm always in my community events. So I think it's great for people to just ask a question. I'm happy to talk about it, and I'm opening up those opportunities to be able to make a pathway that wasn't there for me when I was there, but also be able to make it a lot easier and approachable.
Yeah. Is there a typical kind of pathway into the industry that you're in now? Or for example, for people coming into a production company like your own, is there a typical direction they tend to come from? Or is it a pretty diverse intake in terms of like prerequisite skills and like past experience?
Yeah, I think definitely the courses are already there, like TAFE, SAE, and then people that have just the general knowledge that are, on Google and YouTube and looking at these kind of things, and they've got their own passion. So if they're passionate about it, there are ways for them to look for it. I'm not sure if it's too accessible to certain people, especially Aboriginal people. You're limited in certain ways as well. And like most of the classes and the trainings that I go to, definitely have only one person who was female, let alone First Nations. So I think it needs to be opened up a bit more, whether it's, I don't know if it's the marketing or at least the case of approaching those communities and seeing if there is anyone that is interested in learning something or having a different career path to steer towards. So I think having Balya in this kind of light is showing them that there is a First Nations female doing this and has been. And then I'd love to pass on the baton.
And there's a question that's been added to our sheet here from someone behind the scenes who wants to know what kind of hopes do you have for Balya and Indigenous engagement with and access to the arts from this point into the future?
Yeah, so my hope would definitely be to be able to have those facilitated training workshops open to either just First Nations people and to have about 10 or 12 or however many groups to be able to engage certain people that might have the interest. So it becomes just a full training for them to be welcome into the industry as well, to have the same the quality that we have had with having other courses available and just making it more known. So yeah, I definitely would love to facilitate some of those and be a bit of a guidance and a role model to talk to the people about it.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, at least during my time at university, there was so much around representation within things like STEM and so many programs about bringing women into STEM. And I feel like these kind of areas, particularly the arts production, these conversations often get forgotten about, or they're just kind of not seen as quite as important as these more, industrious, technology-based industries. And so I think it's really important, as you say, to have role models and people like you in the community showing what can be done.
Yeah, definitely. And I think my face is already in the arts industry. It's just making the face known within the community that there are those opportunities available. And there's someone that's doing that can either be there to help guide you and facilitate it.
And as punters, how can we help create spaces for Indigenous people, especially in this industry?
Yeah, well, I definitely think it's passing the mic. So having this conversation right now is really great. And there are always those boxes that we have to tick to be able to make sure that we can get First Nations people involved and having a presence there and wanting more content, especially with Indigenous contemporary musicians, artists, performances. So I think having that box there for people to either speak to or I have a selection criteria too, but I think it's great to have people, First Nations people, on those boards, on those original discussions, and opening that up to either people that are in the industry or opening up to community.
And so people hopping on board with Balya, what does their journey like? Is there a typical journey from start to finish that you're kind of curating for them, or is it kind of fluid? How does that work?
Yeah, so I've got a lot of industry connections and relationships, and so I think it's a great way to kind of start the conversations and tap people on the shoulder and be like, hey, there's this amazing person that's doing some media work. Do you have someone who is a mentor that you think you can tap them into? Spend a week or two. Happy to be able to either facilitate that, to be able to push the people in the right directions of maybe you can have a look at this training course, or let's have a conversation, let's meet. So I think it's really great to be able to do that.
And how big is the team at Balya that you've been working with over the past year?
Yeah, so over the team itself is 3 at the moment, so 3 women. Myself and 3 other women, Deanna Newchurch, who is my creative producer. And then we have, she's Narunga Nations and Ghana. And then I have Cara Hume, who was with Hume Walker, and they are pretty much, we've all worked together within like 10 to 12 years. So it's a great little support network there as fierce females. But also with the team, when we build for events, we have mentors that come on board and then we match them with mentees. So I've had 6 mentors and mentees previously. And then under that, I've had another 4 mentees. So it's pretty much selecting a team to be able to run these events, especially for First Nations content. And my biggest thing is making sure that we can get First Nations people to fill those roles and be guided or under the wing of those industry professionals.
And you've spoken a bit about what you hopefully the kind of startup as events start to come back to life might look like. But do you have any sort of long-term goals, beyond the next 6 months of what you hope to see happen with the company?
Yeah, I definitely love to see it take its own lead in the industry outside of Balya, but also to be able to hold those spaces for Indigenous people in those industries, to maybe open up the options a bit more. So I think people are already chatting about it, and the fact that I've started my business, especially in the arts industry, is that people are on board already. They want this to happen. Not only just performers, artists, arts workers, and production as well. So it's a big conversation. I'm only in Adelaide at the moment, but it's stretching far and wide.
Mm.
So the First Nations grapevine is really great also.
Yeah, the thing that I really love about Balya is it doesn't only give an opportunity for people to get an experience in the industry, but I think the mentorship is a really powerful thing that you're doing, that I think is sometimes overlooked. We kind of think about experience in the industry as just, what jobs have you worked before, and not necessarily how you got into those jobs and the knowledge that you were given when you started those jobs. I think it's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, definitely. Like I've had a lot of great mentors. I still have a very fierce support female team behind me. Not only female, but males that are pushing for it. And so having the mentors there that I didn't have the experience. So I just got the hands-on experience. So I think it's great, whether it's on paper or it's just on site, learning by hand is what I really love to offer.
And maybe, I guess, taking a bit of a sideways turn here. So recently there's been as a white Australian, I've seen an upsurgence of like language classes for Indigenous languages and things like that. So how's the inclusion and use of language important in Balya, running the company, getting it up and running, and how do you integrate that into your projects as well?
Yeah, so the language component of me in Balya is pretty much, I'm still learning my own language. So my nana is stolen generation. So I'm actually educating myself on my own region and spelling systems and all that. So it's not really built into the program itself, because Balya is not strictly to just one tribe or one language group. So it's open to everyone. Balya itself is just because it identifies me. So me being Gugada is that it is very, very close to another desert language as well. So I don't identify with those kind of tribes, but I am Gugada. Balya is how I spell it. So spelling systems are always different. And we always talk language, especially when we're together. So we bounce off of each other. But like myself and Diana, for example, we don't speak the same language, but we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, and definitely because Diana works at Mod as well, so having Diana around the office, it's definitely that fierce Indigenous female vibe. So I can just imagine what the meetings are like.
Oh, yeah, they're good. Some people are, you talk really fast. It's like, yeah, we know what we're saying. Keep on.
So if someone was interested in being, say, a mentor, how would they approach you?
Yeah, definitely come have the conversation if they're wanting to be involved and wanting to offer their skill sets to mentor somebody in community or even in the city. That's why the fact is that it's community events, and I love to give that opportunity to mentors to be able to come out to a community to get that experience. So they're getting experience by learning and working within community and community members. But they can definitely hit me up whenever they see me. hit me up on my socials via email, just have a conversation. And I'm definitely creating a list of the amazing people that I do work with that have that mentor ability and approachable kind of feeling, energies, good energies.
Now, I have a question here, which will relate to your own experience, but also to about what we hope to see in the industry in the near future. And it's, do you think that the art scene is ready to be confronted with the fact that it needs to be more inclusive and ready to commit to doing more to give opportunities to Indigenous people? And what could it be doing better in this regard?
Yeah, 100%. I think they're ready for it. They're asking for it. People are asking about their RAPs, their reconciliation action plans. I've been asked on a couple of those as well, which is really great. And I think that not even just going to arts and industry performers, people that are in the arts industry, but also having those conversations in communities and being like, what can we do to help you? It's the question of asking, not telling. So I think that again is passing the mic. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Passing the mic, especially, I guess, with the Black Lives Matter movement that's happening at the moment. There very much is, it's time for the Black voices to be heard. And there are so many. And, women like yourself who are out there and doing this stuff already. So how do we make sure there's follow through with the RAP process? So we've seen that companies who have a RAP don't always continue to apply this to their work.
Yeah, I think it's definitely accountability and checking in that people are exactly ticking off their RAP plans, that they are looking at their constitutions. Funding bodies, again, there are reasons why people get funding. They've selected these criteria and they've had those conversations. So I think definitely a checkup, follow-up, and just to make sure that they are looking at the values and morals of exactly why they started. And that's what I think is great about this COVID stuff, is that we're actually being present in the moment and checking in on ourselves about our morals and our values as business owners and arts workers as to why are we doing this? Why am I here? Why am I in this position? And then you question exactly that. Is your job, is it worth it? We've been looked at as that it's redundant. It's like, that's completely incorrect. So I think, yeah, it's always the check in on your staff, check in on your First Nations mates, like check in on those major events and festivals, and just have those conversations, open them up, be teachable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think having the arts, being forced to step back from our communities at the moment, it's shown how important sections have been. So things like, businesses like yourself, it's that hole has been left there now. So you can really feel that it's not all about, these massive commercial musicals that can't happen in these 2,000 seat theater. Like, that's not really what we're missing on a community level at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Like a community, bush doof in a sense, or just going out in the community and putting up some PA systems. The sand and the ground is your stage. Like, we don't dance with shoes on and whatnot. That's where you reconnect again to country. And I think, it's important.
And a number of the guests that we've spoken to here on Mod TV have spoken about how, as awful as COVID is, it's pointing to ways that we can do things better. And it's pointing out particularly the things that we don't want to return to. So in some ways, there's this kind of long-term, hopefully positive change to come out of things. Do you feel like you're part of that kind of assessing, like what wasn't working before and how can we encourage the industry and the way we run things to improve when we come out of this on the other side?
Yeah. So I think the positive things coming out of it would be exactly that, is you're taking a step back, you're slowing down and you're reassessing, looking at it and what different approaches you can come from. Like the digital, like I'm now having a Zoom with you guys because I can't be face to face. So that's one thing there. There's people that don't have access to the internet. There's people that don't have the right like technology that can keep up with some processes and graphics. So there are like going back to basics. 100% go back to basics. Like, stripping your things down, certain things that you probably don't need. It's a need to a want. So I think the positive thing coming out of it is just, the need to the want.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now moving forward, so if any mentees want to get involved with you, so we've spoken about mentors, but anyone who wants to be a mentee with you, do they just contact you through socials? Like, what's the kind of process they go through?
Yeah, definitely. So we're working on the website at the moment, so we can be able to do, we can do expression of interest for people to get in touch with us, whether they want to be a mentor, a mentee, get on board as a sponsor, make a vision happen. It's all about collating that data, and then when we do get to the process of being able to run these events in any community, it's not restricted to Ceduna itself. My home is that I had to do that for myself, for my people, for coming back and doing exactly what I left community for, to bring back to community. So it can be anywhere within South Australia at this point, and that's what we're focused on, but we're not limited to just South Australia. So website, email, again, just tap me on the shoulder, say good day, have a chat.
Awesome. And we'll have links and things down in the chat as well if anyone wants to click on them and go and find you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Letisha. We've really appreciated you taking time out to speak with us. We've really enjoyed the chat that we've had as well.
Yeah, thank you guys. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Letisha.
No worries. Bye.
Bye.